Jump down to a review of adverse childhood experiences, and we're fortunate to have this discussion tonight. We also have Melony Williams, who is a clinical supervisor at TLC, to share some important information regarding childhood trauma. And then following that, so it's drogue robotics, adverse childhood experiences. Then we can go to special education. Will be a brief presentation by Chris Bizzo, and then I recommend we go into non-public.
I did want to, I've been getting a lot of complaints about pickup and drop-off for Maple Ave. Pretty much everybody in the neighborhood has come to me complaining about speeding. It's been brought up several times, and I just wanted to have the board discuss it.
Can I add one thing as well?
Of the amount of information on the agenda, my hope is that you did have the opportunity to review the meeting the needs of all students, especially the adverse childhood experience. And I hope you had a chance also to look at the video, to at least have a greater awareness. This is a very, very important topic that we need to have in preparation for preparing the budget, as well as have publicly as well as privately and not public, so the board is aware of this particular issue. And so I look forward to that discussion with you. But this I want to share with you is not a New Hampshire dilemma. This is a national issue. Across our country, we have seen an increase of this challenge. And so it's something that we can't ignore, and it's something that we have to, in the appropriate way, address, because we're not talking about a small group of children. We're talking about the entire school community, because one child who's having difficulty impacts many others. We're concerned about that child, but we're also concerned about all other children being impacted. And our objective is to take a step back and do some retooling and redesigning the most effective way to assist every student in the Claremont School District. Roman numeral 6B.
And you wanted to go with childhood experiences first?
If I could, please. I hope you had the opportunity to review the information in my report. This information was developed by drawing from different sources, also in partnership with TLC, and working on a community focus. It's been very clear to me over the past 6 years that we have a small number of children who have very important and specific needs. And these needs are such that we are being challenged to work with them effectively. We try different strategies, different approaches. Some are successful, some are not. But what we've realized is that the intensity seems to be increasing over time. And if you did have the opportunity to review this, strong, graded relationships between the level of traumatic stress in childhood and poor physical, mental, and behavioral outcomes later in life, let alone during the child's education, are major, major concerns. And so after my 6 years in working with the elementary, middle, and high school faculty and administration, it's time to talk about this publicly. We're not talking about Claremont, we're talking about a national concern. And I'm not saying that we have the solution and we're going to fix the world, but I am saying if it's not going as well as you'd like, or if you have challenges, you can turn your back on it, you can make excuses and point fingers and blame, or you can say, so how can we address this more effectively? And so that's what this is about tonight. As one of the bricks that we are building as we develop future budgetary decisions. And this has to be a piece of that process. So tonight, we're not going to have a resolution, but tonight, my goal is that the board, after this evening, will remember that this needs to be one of the targets that we work toward as we plan for the future. I'm very pleased to welcome Melony Williams. She and also Liza Draper from TLC. They are two professionals who work closely with children, with our community. TLC has become a partner with the Claremont School District. They have shared resources with us, and I look forward to continuing that relationship. And let me just say, it's not just only TLC, but this is not a school district issue. This is our community's issue. And so to be effective, we need to partner, and we need to expand that partnership. So welcome Melony. I've asked Melony if she could just share her experiences with you to provide us with a better understanding of this challenge. Thank you.
So I'm Melony Williams. I'm the clinical supervisor at TLC Family Resource Center here in town. I've been at TLC for 10 years. I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor, but have been doing home visiting, and I'm in the community. I'm seeing what's happening, and definitely there are some things that we can work on. We just showed resilience. I know a lot of people probably couldn't make it, and we're going to show it again, but has anyone heard of that? Resilience, the Biology of Stress and the Science of Hope. And it's an amazing movie, and it talks about adverse childhood experiences, which are things like being abused or neglected as a child, having a parent incarcerated, parents who divorce or separate, things that you and I all see all the time, right? But it can have an effect on kids. And these are prevalent. I have little notes that I wrote on blue paper, so I can't see them, but 67% of people who were surveyed in this ACE study had at least one adverse childhood experience. So that's not just Claremont. This was done in California, and it is a nationwide problem. And so what can we do, right? We had, and what have I seen? So we had more than 60 people come to see resilience, which is amazing. And that tells me that we have an engaged community, right? And you all would probably like to see it too. So we're gonna rescreen it at some point. We're working on that here in Claremont and also in Newport, because Newport wants the information too. But it is happening here. I'm going into homes where, you know, people are wondering where their next meal is coming from, or I'm going to get, you know, a food box from the food pantry. Housing is unstable. Maybe one parent is struggling with mental illness. That's another one of the ACEs. Or there's the opioid crisis. I'm sure you're all aware of that. So we're seeing that too. So it is happening. And if you can imagine being a kid in that environment, it's going to be pretty hard to listen in school if that's what you're doing, what you're experiencing at home, right? So what can we do? So we can be informed. You all have access to information about ACEs, so you can read about that and you can know about them, and we can spread that information to the community as well, because it shouldn't just be professionals who know about it, it should be everyone, because if knowledge is power, right? If we know these things exist, then maybe we can prevent them together and have a stronger community. So we can create a safe community. I think Claremont has a lot of good things going for it, and it's a pretty safe place to be. I think all of you would agree. You know, we have our issues, but there's some strengths here too. So we can build upon those strengths. That's one thing. We can continue educating. We have institutions here who are trauma-informed. How many people have been to trauma-informed trainings? Oh, not a lot. Okay, so we'll keep going. Yeah, Corey has. I've seen her on it. So trauma-informed, the NCTSN, which is the National Childhood Traumatic Stress Network says that trauma-informed is all parties recognize and respond to the impact of traumatic stress on those who have contact with the system, including the children, the caregivers, and the service providers. So everyone's impacted, even teachers, right? Even me. It's hard to go into a home and see these things and not be able to fix it as well as I'd like, but to help people move along the path is what I'm doing. So what can you do? We can keep talking, we'll show the movie again, and you can refer to TLC because there are trauma-informed systems. The school is coming on board. We were at that training with Cassie, and I know that you guys are getting that information out, not just to administrators, but to teachers and to paras and people who are directly serving these kids so that they can understand trauma and how it impacts a child's day, right? How it impacts their heart and how it impacts their behavior. And some of the behaviors are challenging. If you don't feel safe, you're going to behave in a certain way, right? So we need to help kids feel safe, and that's easier said than done. We can help. You can refer to TLC. You can say, hey, there's some people here who could help. We can go into their homes and help put some resources in place that can support the family and maybe reduce some of those traumas or stressors that are occurring. We can connect them to West Central, they are trauma informed as well. They know about trauma and can help kids recover from trauma. Even preschools in our area, there was an initiative called Trauma-Informed Early Childhood Services, and even preschool providers were trained in recognizing trauma and how it impacts children and their learning and their brain development. And so we're doing well as a community. We can continue going and continue teaching people about trauma, but we're already on the path, which is good news. Yeah, I think we can keep going, and this is a discussion. I could tell you lots and lots about trauma and about how it affects the growing brain and how it affects children's behaviors and their relationships, but there's hope, that's the other thing. So the movie is really difficult to watch at first because you're getting all this information about how many people are affected by trauma and adverse childhood experiences, but then it goes into the science of hope, and one person who understands and believes in a child and listens to them can change their path, right? If you guys all think right now about one person in your life who understands and listens to you and believes in you, hopefully everyone has that. And you can be that for some of these kids, and we can help their parents be that because we're in the home and we're talking to their parents about what they've been through and how it impacts their parenting. So my message is we all have to work together. I have a lot more information I could talk to you about. I know there's not a ton of time, so I won't take a lot of your time tonight, but I'm happy to come back whenever and share what I know, and I appreciate you listening. Any questions? Yeah.
Rebecca.
I just want to tell you thank you for coming. And this is a topic that I feel very strongly about, so I'm glad that our school district is actually starting to discuss it out in the open. And I hope that we keep on talking about it, and we keep on making changes, and we keep on doing what's best for kids and teachers and other students, because it affects everybody.
Exactly.
And I just wanted to say your point about how trauma affects the brain is probably one of the best things I've ever heard anybody say, because I think it's important for people to know about chemicals, serotonin, oxytocin, all those things, so that they can better understand that sometimes kids can't even control what's emanating from them. So I could talk to you for probably hours and hours and hours, but I just want to say I am stoked that this is a conversation that's going to be happening and hopefully a lot more frequently.
Not going to be, is happening.
Yes.
I think that's
I
an
love
important
that.
distinction.
I love that. Thanks, Corey.
I think that's a huge message that, so when you see a trauma, you might not know exactly how to talk about it, and we can talk about strategies, but you still might not know, right? Like I've been doing this work for 15 years, and still people say things to me, and I'm just not sure how to respond sometimes. But just being there and saying, I heard you, is enough.
And to be honest, the biggest gift of all is knowing you're not alone.
Yeah.
Some of us grow up, I think when people go through this, especially children, they develop this concept of terminal uniqueness.
And shame.
And shame, remorse, fear, and it leads to a lot of other issues as you
It
grow up as an
certainly
adult untreated. And so I think that's the message, is you have to reach out for help. And if you see something, don't walk past it. Stop and help.
Exactly.
We've been able to do a community film series, and I think that our timing has been a little off because there's conflicts with, baseball and other things this time of year, but we showed Paper Tigers and Resilience. The TLC showed Resilience, we showed Paper Tigers. They're done by the same filmmakers, they're on a similar topic. And then we, last night, showed a film called The Mask You Live In, and all three of these things are connected, and you'll see actually the same experts in the different films. But the idea of what you were just speaking to, these issues don't go away just as we get bigger. They just transform and get potentially more dangerous and more impactful and more debilitating. And so how do we intervene with our children when they're younger to help them have better outcomes later in life? And so all of these we have access to regularly, so we can do additional screenings and things of that nature, probably in the winter months when people are less busy and looking for things to do. We have one more coming up, not quite as related to the three, just because I think it's completely different filmmakers, but really on the opioid epidemic and how a local Vermont doctor has addressed that. And so that's real to us,
And
right?
there's a good chance they're connected.
It's all connected,
They're
but I think it might be different filmmakers was my only point
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
difference between them. And that one is The Hungry Heart, so that's coming up on the 6th. But we do own these now or have ready access to them, so I'd like to have them be seen
Is there
again.
any chance we can get them on CCB?
Let me look into that.
That
My only
would be-
hesitation is licensing, so I don't know
Yeah.
if our license allows us to
I
broadcast.
think as long as you're not making money.
Or
if it's a-
not.
If it's a public
Or
service,
even-
it's a
Or
public
even
service.
stream it on our website.
Something, yeah, that way you could go at it anytime you wanted to. Be a lot more access that way.
The one thing I want to say that Melanie said that I really keyed on, that there is hope. And that this isn't a parent's problem or a grandparent's problem. This is our problem. And that it is a community issue. And again, as Melanie said, it's not about Claremont, it's about where we are in our society today. But the reason I want to discuss it I agree with Rebecca, we need to talk about this because it's real and it's a challenge. But then, besides talking about it, let's make some plans to continue this conversation and then to talk about how we can improve our capacity to assist children. And when I say children, I'm talking about every child, because every child is impacted, as well as the faculty and the school community. So I want to thank you.
Frank?
Oh, I'm sorry. Frank.
Everybody's jumping in ahead of me.
Oh, sorry, Frank.
I heard you mention West Central Behavioral Services, and which hints to me, based on what Middleton just said, that this effective interventions really require a specific skill set. This isn't something that you could say, okay, guidance, do your thing with this. So, and I know where Middleton's going, and as he's speaking, I'm thinking strategic restructuring, which is a Middleton type of way that we would do this. But are you available to assist us when we start looking at a needs analysis? Because I know we have some interventionists in the schools now, but this is pretty specific types of trauma really
Yes,
therapy.
so there's evidence-based practices that
Right.
can help with trauma, and I'm trained in one of them, child-parent psychotherapy, which I've been doing for 8 years, and it is amazing. So it's a year-long treatment, weekly, kind of, because nobody can come in weekly, but with a dyad, so working on that relationship between the parent and the child. And a lot of work is done, not just the parent, it could be any caregiver, but working on where that caregiver has come from and how they're triggered in that relationship based on their own experiences, and helping that child to express their trauma and be heard and figure out ways to move on and cope. So there are evidence-based practices, and people are trained at West Central to do those. So that's a higher level, but these, adverse childhood experiences, we can help with those, right? We can help minimize the effects on the heart and the behavior of adverse childhood experiences. If somebody in the classroom is going through a parent being divorced, and it's not necessarily traumatic, they're not fearful that they're going to die or someone they love is going to die, that's trauma, right? But they are troubled by it. That's where we can help. But that's a good point.
I worry about relying too much on West Central. I've seen a lot of people whose particular insurance situations
Yeah.
Prevent them from accessing that. So I'd like to know that we had something that was more accessible to everyone as we develop our plans other than West Central. And I'm
I
not,
do a little bit of CPP, 3 clients.
So just to that point, that's a continual struggle in our community. I know West Central is, they have a lot of need and they don't always have enough staff to support the need that's coming at them. And I think kind of all of these similar service providers, the school district included, run into that scenario. So Melanie and I had connected. We did apply for a grant to get some technical assistance to help train our school personnel to create trauma-sensitive schools. Did not get that grant, FYI. However, one of the primary reasons we didn't get that grant is because we need to develop a multi-tiered system of support for behaviors across our district, and that was a big chunk of the points awarded in that particular grant. So we have some folks who have stepped up and said they're willing to work on that and get that ball rolling and help us in that. However, the folks that were offering the grant said there's going to be another opportunity coming out in the next couple of months for those schools who don't have an MTSS system in place. We already have it written from the first time. It's a good opportunity for us to just, resubmit to the next funding opportunity. But that's an area that I am keenly focused on based on some other discussions we're going to be having shortly in the needs of our students that we're seeing, and knowing what resources are available to help them, and knowing there's not enough resource right now to help all of the kids who need it. So we are looking for alternate funding sources to get the resources we need, and not necessarily just money, but also the staff
right.
to be able to do that, because money is one thing, but if you don't have a clinical mental health counselor, then you're kind of out of luck.
Your answer raised another concern with me in that we're going to train our existing personnel to do it. So what
No,
if-
I said that, but that's not exactly, train our existing personnel to help us create trauma-sensitive schools, not to provide that
Okay,
direct
thank you.
clinical support, but to help us create environments that are more conducive to support students who have these needs, and then sourcing grant funds to get the clinical staff in place in order to support the individual students. We've done a little bit with the System of Care grant. We just hired our project manager. She started Monday. The next position that we're going to be posting is for a social worker wraparound facilitator. There is somebody from TLC and West Central and a few other organizations who are sitting on that leadership committee for that project. And so that's a step in the right direction, but we need more.
Michelle?
I just want to state to Frank's comment, there are other counseling, there's actually, the Moody Betty Building counselors, they work with different adolescents and children also, who accept help through state or other funding insurances. So there are a couple out there other than West Central. So this is a very sensitive subject for me. I happen to be dealing with this right now, actually. Due to my daughter's incarceration and my grandson living with me. So you'll please have to forgive me for my emotional moment.
I want to thank you. This is an important discussion. I think I look back to when I was growing up, and I don't think this was something like Chris said was discussed. I dealt with it as a child, and looking back, I can identify those teachers that now, they knew something was going on. And if nothing else, to be able to get teachers, to have them learn ways to identify and even relate, if nothing else, just to be able to be there for a kid. Fire, police departments, they go into households, and it's there. It's there. There's a lot more poverty these days than there was even 20 years ago, and that has an effect on kids.
Definitely does.
But I am glad that we're discussing this. I'm glad that the school's doing something, because just to have somebody there for a kid is a lot.
And if they need more support, knowing where they could get it,
Right.
right? So you don't have to carry the burden by yourself.
Right.
As a
There-
teacher.
Well, and that I think is, to me, is a big piece of the solution, and the hope piece of this is putting them with people that have been through it, that maybe are outside their authority stream. People like those of us that have been through it, even all these years. The school I work at, I've talked to kids. You can tell, and they'll come out and you talk, and they know they have someone they can just talk to. Nothing else, just to talk about something, and then you get them to the right people that can help them. But the support group. To me, I'm a big believer in the support group side. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. When all's said and done, one-on-one with therapists, it's expensive and it can help, but being in the room with someone that's been through it, that's the strength. The strength in people helping each other, and that's the strength that gives you the freedom to talk about it. When you feel safe because someone else has been through it.
Right.
So I think that, whatever we develop, to me, that's got to be a big piece of it. And those of us in the community need to step up and come in and do what we can to talk and to be an example of life does happen and does go on if you can get through it. But it does take more. You can't do it alone. You just cannot do it alone.
Rebecca?
I just wanted to add a little bit more, but I think we can all agree on the validity of educating and raising awareness and all of that, but to bring it back around to the schools, and I think that Middleton, you touched on it, and Frank and Corey, you as well a little bit, but I cannot stress enough how important it is to have district-wide training on proactive strategies and all of the things that go along with that, because we can talk about it and we can be aware, but if everybody doesn't know how to respond and how to be proactive and how to react, and if there's not a system in place on how to deal with that after, I think all the best efforts in the world might go down the tube if we're all not on the same page as to how to deal with
If I may,
that.
Brian.
Yes.
Rebecca, thank you. I will tell you, my experiences in the past 6 years have been that our elementary, middle, and high school faculty and administration have been doing a yeoman's job and have developed strategies, but it's to a point now, and the severity of it now, that we need assistance. And when I say assistance, I'm not talking about sending a child out. I'm talking about adjusting our, as Frank said, looking at our budget and how we can address this need long-term. And so that being said, this is not going to be resolved tonight, but we've discussed it publicly. We're going to bring this back because it's real, and every student and every faculty member and the families working together over time will address this. And Melony, the agreement was that she could come, but she has another obligation that deals with young children, so I'm
I'm
going to say.
watching her watch. Getting a little
I'm going to say
anxious.
thank you. Thank you,
Melanie.
thank you.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'll come back whenever and
Please.
help however I
Please do.
can. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.